She remains a prominent force in national politics. Now, under her leadership, the Forward Guyana movement has secured a seat in the 13th Parliament, an outcome achieved despite contesting only 7 electoral districts. Her name, Amanza Walton-Desir. The party's success, however, comes amid a public fallout with coalition partner VPAC over the allocation of the lone seat secured by the party. Undeterred by internal divisions, Walton-Desir said her focus is on the work ahead. On this edition of Sources, she outlines her priorities for the new parliamentary session and the direction Forward Guyana intends to pursue. Welcome to Sources. I'm your host, Svetlana Marshall. Today we'll be speaking with the leader of Forward Guyana Movement, MP Amanza Walton-Desir. Welcome to Sources for a second time.
Thank you for having me again. Always a pleasure to be able to sit and talk with you.
How are you doing?
I'm good. Very well, thanks. Very
and
well.
Congratulations on securing a seat in the National Assembly.
Yes. It's been, that seat has been very interesting.
But have it soaked in? Have you really, thought about it?
For me, it's all in a day's work, I suppose. So the people who know me know that I do what has to be done and I keep it pushing. So hearing from people about how proud they are, about the importance of what the movement would have accomplished, it's very encouraging. And we just look forward to the work ahead. There's a lot of work to be done. So
I will definitely talk about what you have planned for the party. How do you utilize your parliamentary seat? But I want to start off the conversation talking about the recent ruling handed down by the Court of Appeal. Now, before the elections, Forward Guyana went to the court expressing concern about its omission from the ballot paper in 3 regions. You also included ALP in that electoral case. Now, you went from the High Court to the Court of Appeal. Obviously, you weren't satisfied, but the Court of Appeal said, you know what, we don't have any jurisdiction to hear this case, but it went on to pronounce on the matter, in a sense, to clarify any issue, but it said that it was a case that was most unmeritorious. What's your thought on that?
Well, I think it's most regrettable. I think, and as an officer of the court, the disposition of the court has to be that our role is to clarify, to make clear, to interpret the laws. And so any citizen has a right to approach the court, particularly when it comes to the exploration and the examination of constitutional law matters. And so the disposition was a little disappointing to say, oh, time was taken up. That is why you were there. That is why taxpayers pay judges, that we have a discrete, separate third branch of the government to particularly adjudicate, to take time to look at these matters. So I think there is need to rethink the mindset. Importantly as well, it's important to note that this case has to be framed in the correct way. This is about voter rights. This is not about Forward Guyana movement primarily. We may just be the vehicle through which a citizen who has a right to present themselves for electoral office or for office, the vehicle through which that is done. But ultimately, this is an issue of voter access.
Now let's talk about voter access. The court said, well, Forward Guyana contested the election, yes, but in 7 of the 10 electoral districts. Now, it didn't contest the elections in 7, 8, and 9, and so that's no fault of GCOM. Now, how could it be an issue of voters' rights?
I'll tell you why. GCOM has set a minimum requirement that you must, in order to be able to compete for the national elections, you must qualify in 6 regions amounting to 13 seats. That minimum requirement has been met.
By reaching...
By contesting 6. We contested 7.
Yeah.
So we exceeded the minimum requirement. And so in the face of that, the court's conclusion is not necessarily the correct one. And we disagree with their conclusion. Now, having set this minimum, you have qualified. Why are you not therefore able to take part in the national election? You see, what is happening and what this case is laying bare is that there are 3 different types of elections happening at the same time. And I believe that the legal officer that GCOM fired made this point to them. What, in essence, the court is unjustly saying is that national participation is tied to regional participation. And that could never be the case. Because I'll give you an example. If I am a teacher living in Region 4, for example, I'm transferred to Region 9. For the convenience of voting, I transfer to Region 9. My life, etc., is in Region 4. I'm a Guyanese citizen. The administrative arrangement of requiring that people vote within geographic constituencies could never affect the qualitative right to vote. And an important part of the qualitative right to vote is what you call ballot access. Now, mind you, all of this goes away if GCOM strictly and correctly interprets what ROPA says, and that is, if you meet the minimum of 6, you appear on the top half of the ballot. Obviously, if you are not contesting a geographic seat, you would not have a geographic representative from the region that you're not contesting. That has nothing to do with the remaining 40 national seats.
So you're saying that even though you did not submit a list of candidates, say for example Region 9, from which the applicant is from, Ms. Fisher, that you could still, once you amass enough votes,
Absolutely.
you could still secure a seat. And you could still utilize somebody from your national top-up list to represent the region in Parliament. That's your argument.
It is not necessarily representing the region. This is an issue of proportionality, and this mechanism.
I know, because it's not the geographical constituency; it's the national. So you're representing the national.
There you go.
The party is a national party.
Because the seats that you can contest amount only to 25.
Yes.
So by locking access to the national vote, by hinging that on 25 votes as access to 40 seats, 25 seats rather as access to 40 seats, it does not make sense. And I do not think the framers of our law intended such an absurd result, because Ms. Fisher is a national top-up candidate. She qualifies to be a national candidate. As well as the law is settled that the elections for the Parliament and the elections for the President are separate. This is why your President is named on your national list. So there is a lot of merit in what we're saying. And if only for the value of exploring and clarifying our legal framework, I believe it is important that Ms. Fisher and her lawyer has indicated that they will be pursuing this case to the CCJ. It cannot be that a citizen is punished for inquiring of a court whose function it is to interpret the law, that they're punished for doing that.
And when you say punish, are you referencing to the cost? Because
I'm referencing
I know
the
that
cost.
was a big factor.
I am referencing the cost.
The High Court awarded costs to the tune of $1 million to both GCOM and the Attorney General.
$1 million a piece.
Each. So it means that she would have, and I think, and the appeal court have now adjusted the timeline to November 14. Would she be paying that, or?
Oh, we will appeal. And so the lawyer for Ms. Fisher has indicated that they will approach the CCJ because we are aware that the CCJ has said that in the Attorney General versus Christopher Jones, that when members of the public come with matters that allow the court the opportunity to explain and to clarify, they're doing a public service and so should not be penalized by exorbitant costs. And so the court or by costs, period. So what the court did is that they vacated the costs, the order for costs made by the lower court, and said each party will bear their own legal costs. So the effect is chilling. And the message that's being sent is that you do not dare question us, or else you'll have to pay. What it is saying is that access to justice belongs to the rich. What it is saying is that the minibus conductor, the minibus driver, the nurse, the teacher, the painter, the doctor, the home care aide had better be very sure that they have a few $1 million before they think about approaching a court. That could not be what the architects of our Constitution and our legal system intended. And this is indeed why if we say Lady Justice is blind, because whosoever will may come and may approach the court. And particularly because this is not a private matter, as in a matter between two individuals, and one is using the legal system to harass or to abuse another party. This is a citizen coming to the court to say, GCOM has said this in its own guidance material. They have advertised that these parties qualify for the national election, for the geographic constituency election, and for the regional election. So why is it that all of the parties are not appearing in the ballots? Because they meet the minimum requirements, and your own publication suggests that they do. What is so wrong with that question? There's nothing wrong with that question. And I would think that any court would be happy to take the opportunity, not to belittle a citizen who does this, but to say, to clarify that this is where the law is, etc. And so we look forward to it going to the next level, because I believe that there is serious merit there. And I will note that a lot of people who thought that maybe Ms. Fisher was being facetious and so on and so forth, having sat and listened, having read, they're realizing, aha, this is a problem. And Forward Guyana, the movement, we are committed to challenging the status quo. Satlana, laws were made for man, not the other way around. And if your country is growing, your country is dynamic, it therefore means that the law has to respond. It has to respond to the emerging electoral landscape in terms of the number of parties that are now contesting. It has to respond because maybe decisions were made for administrative convenience because we didn't have the money at that time to fund GCOM to operate in a particular way. That is no longer the case. And so we have to commend citizens who are brave enough to come to say, you know what, this has to change. This needs to be tested. Yeah.
Now, whether or not the appeal is successful at the level of the CCJ, FGM has cemented its name in history by becoming one of the 4 parties that will take up seats in the National Assembly.
Yes.
And I asked you earlier about, how it feels having only contested in 7 of the 10 electoral districts. And despite the court ruling against or ruling in favor of GCOM and not in favor of the party has managed to secure enough seats. What it took to achieve that, and I think in a previous program I mentioned that you launched your party just days before nominations day.
The movement was launched.
Yes.
I first formed Forward Guyana.
Yeah.
And then, of course, because I truly believe in a big tent approach to politics. I believe that the essence of an inclusionary democracy means that you include as many people as you possibly can in organizations. And so you had 3 organizations coming together to form the movement.
Yeah.
And it took a lot of work. It took a lot of commitment from individuals who believed in a vision. And for us, the guiding like the North Star is service to people. How do we better the lives of Guyanese, of the ordinary Guyanese? How do we make their lives better? From the opposition benches, how do we advocate? How do we pressure the government because this is clearly a government that only responds to pressure. There is an unwillingness to do something simply because it's right and simply because it's in the best interest of the people. And so we have our work cut out for us. We harbor no illusions that this is a task that will be done immediately. This is a long, harrowing road that we will have to walk to bring the type of change that we want to see in this country.
Now, the APNU requested a recount and was granted recounts for regions 4 and 5. The what you call the party We Invest in Nationhood, WIN, had attempted to get a recount. I think that request was denied by the Ghana Elections Commission. Now, Ford Ghana movement did not request any recount. Is it that you were pleased with the tabulation process, the conduct of the election in itself? Was it up to your standard, or up to what the law requires in your eyesight?
I cannot say that it was, but we are not, we're not reluctant to admit that it was a question of capacity. And so we were not able to field agents at every polling place, etc. So it really is a question of capacity. And so we thought that it was better that those parties that had the ability and the capacity to field a polling agent in every polling station, etc., that they would have more information. Of course, we were very clear in our willingness to provide moral support once we were apprised of what the difficulties were, what the irregularities were, and of course requiring that those be remedied.
But you've done your assessment, I assume, on the conduct of the 2025 elections by GCOM. What you would like to see done differently for the next elections? What were some of the things that you were, satisfied with, you were pleased, and what are some of the things that you were not happy with?
The only thing that I could say we were pleased with in terms of the conduct of the elections was the conduct of the people of Guyana. Despite a lot of frustration, people chose to remain calm. They chose not to resort to violence. In the life of the last parliament, I made an observation that the PPP rigged these elections before the single vote was cast. And I remain convinced of that. When you look at the arrangements and the administrative arrangements that were made for the conduct of the elections, this is why I noted that the mischief was in that work plan. This is why I noted that they began to set the stage for this from the time they amended the Registration of Births and Deaths Act to allow for late registrations based only on the word of a Tosha or a Justice of the Peace. So they allowed people who had, who were not Guyanese to become Guyanese and to be entered onto the list. Now, what is also important is that GCOM does not have the ability, nor does it have the legal mandate to go behind an issued birth certificate. So no scrutineer can question the authenticity of a birth certificate. Once I show up there, GCOM has a mandate to register me. There's no authority to go behind that to determine how it was granted. And so the entire system has been set up in such a way that it is affected from the source document itself. Mind you, GCOM compiles the voters list. It is not the original source of documentation or of the requirements used to get on the list, which is why it is so vitally important, and it ties back into the ruling that the court gave, because in essence what the court was saying is that GCOM cannot be questioned after nominations day, except by way of an elections petition, right? So GCOM can do what it wants, basically is what the court is saying. It can affect your constitutional rights, and there's nothing you can do save and except by elections petition. And that has to be just intuitively wrong, because what you're saying is that constitutional rights could effectively be suspended and GCOM could do what it wants, and that cannot be the intent of the framers of our law. Or perhaps it is, given the fact that a lot of these amendments, etc., were forced down the throats of Guyanese by the PPPC government using the then one-seat majority that they inherited, or that they won, rather. So, you see, do you see how it is all interconnected? There is no standing alone. All of it is interconnected, and to quote Anil, it concatenates into just a web that will see the PPP, unless the people of Guyana demand otherwise, potentially being in power for a very, very long time, because they have effectively captured the system. They've captured the registrar's office. They've captured the legislation in terms of weakening our citizenship requirements. They've captured the General Register's office. They've captured GCOM in its current configuration. There's always a 4-3 majority vote. And so what is the redress of Guyanese? And this is how they have set the system up to make sure that they remain in power indefinitely. Let me make this point. Because now they have taken to allowing, well, now they have taken to allowing, they are exploiting the provision in the law about Commonwealth citizens.
And I was going to ask about that. How would constitutional reform address issues such as the one with Commonwealth citizens, where once you're a Commonwealth citizen, you live in Guyana for 1 year or more, you're allowed to register to vote.
Well, you see, you have to not only live, but you have to be domiciled.
Is that part
And domicile
enforced?
is a particular thing.
But
and so, and this is the question, is the issue of domicile enforced? Now, we have to understand that this Commonwealth citizen issue is a holdover from colonial times that allowed British citizens who were overseas, etc., to be able. So you have a colonial holdover that is being exploited to keep an oppressive government in power in perpetuity. Because what we are understanding is that particularly Bangladeshis, Indian nationals, etc., are being brought to this country. And it's a condition of their employment that, hey, you got to vote like this. And because in our politics the margins are so narrow, it's a problem. As you may know, we requested from GCOM information on the number of Commonwealth citizens registered. The first request went unanswered. We sent a second request. We received correspondence the day before yesterday, which would have been a Wednesday, from the chair of GCOM, indicating that there were 2,000 persons registered as Commonwealth.
2,000.
2,000. Now, it's a nice, neat figure.
From a list of...
But what was interesting is that we could not get from GCOM the disaggregation. So how many of those people are Nigerians? How many are Bangladeshis? How many are Trinidadians? How many are from Sri Lanka? GCOM has yet failed. So if you could arrive at 2,000, that is the aggregate of a smaller set of numbers, isn't it? So why can't we know exactly how many of these people are here?
And are you satisfied that there
We're
are
not
2,000
satisfied. We're not
Commonwealth citizens
satisfied.
on the
What we
list?
want to see is a disaggregation of that number, because, like I said, it would be no harm to present it. If you know it's 2,000, then you ought to be able to tell me, well, 5 are from here, 10 are from there, 300 are from there. That information is not forthcoming.
Now, the other thing when it comes to constitutional reform, and each and every, I could say that, observer mission that came to Guyana and looked at these elections said something is wrong with the composition of the Elections Commission, that the system as it is no longer working, right? Do you feel that you're represented on the current commission? And do you think that with the new composition in Parliament, you have Forward Guyana Movement, you have APNU, and you have WIN, along with the People's Progressive Party, do you think there is need for there to be a change or provisions in law for there to be a change at the level of the commission?
There is need for the entire configuration and construct of the Guyana Elections Commission to change. This arrangement was intended to be a temporary arrangement, and it is almost 30 years old, if not more than 30 years old. It has to change. The Guyana Elections Commission needs to become a technical body staffed by competent technical persons. This is not strange or new. In fact, our GCOM is quite an aberration when you look at the configuration of other electoral management bodies across the world. So our push is not just for these people to resign or whatever. We want the entire system changed so that it reflects the growing electoral reality of where we are. And by God, for the first time, we have the resources to do it. And I hope our message is to the people of Guyana. The institutions have to be fixed. It was not even acceptable that they were not functioning when we did not have the resources to pay people properly, to attract professionals. Now that is no longer an excuse. And so Forward Guyana's position is fix the institutions, fix the foundations of our system, because it stands to reason if we're building a country, we can't build it on a faulty foundation. The entire thing will collapse one day.
Now, I want to switch from the constitutional issues and to address an administrative issue. Now, FGM had flagged an issue on the voters list where I think the identity of a voter was changed without his permission. Now, GCOM had said that they sent the issue to the police. Have you gotten
absolutely
update?
No follow-up? Absolutely no follow-up. Absolutely no update. And GCOM has done nothing to convince us that this is being earnestly pursued. Nothing. So we do not know whether there are other fake IDs existing in the system and how many. And you know what is galling for me is that we do not understand that whilst these things may seem politically expedient, the world is looking at us and laughing. They're looking at us and we are becoming the laughing stock because these are such basic matters, Svetlana, and we can't figure them out. We can't fix them because we're caught up in this triumphalist mentality that, oh, we've won, so you will do and take whatever we give you and you will do whatever we say. And that is where the PPP has this country. And so Irfan Ali goes on the world stage and he puffs himself up, but people are looking at him with the knowledge that, well, hey, you know, you're presiding over a broken system, and they're being carried away with the fact, Svetlana, that we have some light, sweet crude offshore there. And so, yes, people will smile with us. People will tolerate us because we have what they want. But what is most important for a country is respect. And respect by a country is earned when one can look at a country and see that its legal system works, that administratively there's a spirit of excellence that permeates the way we operate, the way we deliver services to the people. That is what brings respect of a country, not bravado, not being on the list of 100 influential or leaders, etc. The foundational things are the things that matter. And the foundational things are the things that people will judge us on. That is the message that we want to make sure that the people of Guyana understand.
Now, I want to switch your attention to the internal affairs now of your own party, the movement.
Yes.
Now, just as some were presenting you or the party with your flowers, having secured a seat in the National Assembly, there was a public dispute over the allocation of seats. That's my understanding, the allocation, how the seat would be utilized in the National Assembly. And I just want to read what your coalition partner said, FEPAC to be exact. It said that you've proven beyond a doubt that you are a bully, an opportunist, a dishonest person. I want you to address those descriptions. And in doing so, what is this big fallout about?
I will say this. Women in politics, women in leadership, we have a very difficult time I think the patriarchal nature of our society does not accommodate women being firm, being principled, and sitting in their truth and in sitting in what they want and being firm about what they want. I think we have grown accustomed in our society and politically, and particularly in the political sphere, we've grown accustomed to women always being the ones that are accommodating and moving aside. And so when you see women take a decision that they will determine the course of their destiny, a lot of people are not sure how to react to that. And so very often when a woman is confident, it's perceived a certain way. Confidence in a man, however, is not perceived the same way. When a woman is sure about what she wants and about where she stands, she's seen as aggressive. That in a man is seen as being self-assured. When a woman can stand and say, this is what will happen, this is how it will go, and this is the principle on which I stand and I will not be moved, the B word is often applied. And so what you're seeing, I think, is the manifestation of the difficulties that women in leadership face. I am unfazed by such labels because I know who I am. The people in my family, my close circle, the people that actually know me, they know who I am. And so I have never been one to be fazed by people calling me names. What I will say is that I'm deeply distressed about the climate that surrounds women in politics and women in leadership. You look at, there's something ongoing right now where the First Lady is being bullied online for being too thin. But Odessa Primus and Coretta McDonald are being bullied for being of a certain weight and appearance. And so it doesn't matter where you are as a woman or on what side of the political divide you find yourself as a woman. It seems as though you're always subject to attacks that your male counterparts are not. And in that regard, I think it is for us as women, and particularly as women leaders, to take stock. Because very often, women themselves are used as the tool to check other women and to embarrass other women. And so it is something that we have to look at and determine the degree to which maybe the internalized misogyny that we struggle with contributes to the disrespect that women face in leadership roles, and particularly in our political landscape. So for me, no, I'm not a bully. No, I'm not dishonest. And I remember my brother calling me seething. He was like, "What? Amanza, this is your fault. When we told you to, when we pointed out to you that, Amanza, you got duty-free concessions, you're parliamentarian, you're not using them. You're still driving the same vehicle that you drove as General Counsel of the Civil Aviation. And now you have somebody saying that you're interested in duty-free." So when you hear that, you have to laugh, because the facts clearly contradict what is being said. And you have to have an assurance of who you are, or people will shake you. And people believe that they could use public opinion to pressure you and to cause you to question yourself. Mm-hmm. But there are a group of women rising up who are having none of that. We know who we are. We're not afraid to challenge the system. And we're not going to be bullied or embarrassed into doing what we do not think is right, or what we know fundamentally is wrong. Mm-hmm.
Now, what decision had to be taken by you as leader of FGM that would have resulted in this dispute?
Well, there has been, and this is the interesting point, there has been no decision.
No decision.
There's been no decision.
So you have not decided
There has been no decision. Talks have been ongoing, but you see, as a leader, mm-hmm. you have to understand that it is important to be temperate. So there has been no decision made as it relates to any matter, we have decided that I'm going into the National Assembly. Whether that may change, we will let the public know. We will let the people who voted for us know. But as it stands, I'm the parliamentary representative. And it only makes sense for obvious reasons. You have the need now for experienced people in Parliament. You're going in with a different configuration. And I think as dialogue has continued to happen, I believe that the error of ways are being understood. And so I am not worried about harm, because I think the truth, once it comes to light, we'll take care of that.
No,
we have a lot of
you said
important
that you
matters
were going
to
to
focus
Parliament.
on.
I think that's what I think everybody concluded, that you will be the FGM parliamentarian, at least for now. But the agreement that was signed, help me understand what it calls for.
The agreement was for the presentation of a single slate.
A single slate.
In the signing of the agreement, there's nothing about seat rotation or any of that.
Nothing about
that. Is purely a decision or something that we have been exploring as a mechanism for building capacity within individuals.
Help me understand that part, because somewhere along the line I saw that there were provision for seats to be split 20 months.
There's no such.
Equally.
There is no
and then
such.
I heard about you were
nothing
spending
like
3 years and 2 years from Mr. London.
This is what is unfortunate. There's nothing to clarify,
No?
because these are discussions that we've been having as to how do we build capacity within the movement. So nothing has been agreed to or signed to, and this is known, and this is why the entire episode is unfortunate, because you cannot take ongoing discussions within a party as a final agreement and then claim that an agreement has been breached when no agreement has been reached, when in a spirit of good faith what we are trying to do is to make sure that as many people as possible, we build capacity in them. So we're in the process of creating a shadowing agenda where, certain people will come to Parliament with me, understand how Parliament works, understand what the standing orders say, understand how to read and interrogate a budget. This is not child's play. This is representing people. It is serious stuff. And so we're in the middle of designing all of this, and this furor erupts.
Have you sat down with Mr. Best since? I know you said,
We've been talking. We have been talking with an aim to understanding, how mistakes were made, with a view to understanding that you're required as leaders to operate on a factual basis and not on the basis of necessarily feelings, because feelings, whilst they're good in some spheres, and emotional and outbursts and so on, whilst they're good in some spheres, and for some issues, you have to be able to be temperate when it comes to representing people. Representing people is serious business in the National Assembly. And I will say that when I was a newbie 5 years ago, it is because I had people who were willing to mentor me, who were willing to sit with me. Yes, I came with 20 years of experience in administrative law and working at senior levels of government and international organizations for over 15 years. So I came with that experience, but I still had to sit and learn how to dissect the budget. I still had to sit and learn the standing orders, etc. And so as a new movement, my role, being the person with experience, is to mentor and to build capacity. And it is a role that I take seriously, and it is a role that I will execute without fear or favor.
Now, you've spoken about, and I know you addressed this in your earlier statements, about being threatened. In your discussions with the FEPAC team, did you say, hey, I need the engagements to be respectful, and did you address the issue of the threats meted out to you?
I think the conversation is ongoing. Not I think the conversations are ongoing, and I think it will be prejudicial
Okay.
for me to say anything further.
All right.
But what I will speak about is what is within my knowledge, which is
Yeah.
what I just spoke about, because it is only Amanza that can explain Amanza's
This
intentions
position.
and motives. And so I hope that the people of Guyana understand very clearly that Forward Guyana movement takes the matter of representation seriously. We take the matter of the capacity of the people that we put to represent us in the National Assembly seriously, and we're committed to building capacity in our members.
Now, my final question, and I promise on this particular issue, does the agreement have a timeline, like a lifeline?
Yes.
What does it end?
It expired on September 2nd.
The agreement expired?
Yes.
So is it that you're talking to
So
renew,
we are, yes, exactly.
renew that agreement?
Exactly.
Okay, great. Now, moving on, you're heading into Parliament. FGM is heading into Parliament along with WIN, a new party, and APNU, a seasoned party. Have you reached out to these parties, or have they reached out to FGM to discuss, as an opposition, how they would approach parliamentary issues, addressing bill legislative matters? Any discussion?
Well, what I can say is that I wrote to Mr. Aubrey Norton and Mr. Azzuddin Mohammed asking that we meet to craft a modus vivendi for the 13th Parliament. I think in our recent constitutional or political history, there has not been that type of configuration in the National Assembly. And of course, we have to be vigilant that the PPP government will seek at every turn to exploit differences. And so I think it is absolutely important that we craft a modus vivendi. And I've reached out, like I said, to Mr. Norton and Mr. Azzuddin Mohammed. I have received acknowledgements from both of them. And so I anticipate that shortly we will be meeting, because there are serious issues that have to be discussed.
Would you tell me what are some of those issues?
No, the obvious. They're obvious issues. Chief whips, what does that look like? The deputy speakership, what is your position on that? There are several committees. How do we deal with that? Do we leverage particular expertise irrespective of which party it comes from? Those types of decisions are critical decisions. And of course, because Parliament, if it is functioning correctly, has such an important role, that there will be little room for fighting within the opposition and fighting the government.
Now, how do you ensure that, FGM has 1 seat, APNU has 12, and WIN has 16 seats? How do you ensure? I see you've already taken, in a sense, a leadership role by reaching out to the 2 other opposition parties, but how do you ensure going forward that you're not overshadowed by these larger political parties? Is that a concern for you?
No, it's never been a concern. It's never been a concern being overshadowed. Our role here is not to hog a spotlight. That's not what we're interested in. We're interested in changing the system. We're interested in making sure that the system works. And so our contribution is not about show, it's about substance. And so I think at a deep level, substance can never be outshone by form and so on.
How do you keep the government in check from where you stand?
Well, the reality of our parliament is that you can have your say, but they will have their way. And that is the reality of our parliament. But I think a strategic opposition has to function in a manner that it makes the government, it makes ignoring proposals by the opposition politically costly for the government to ignore. And Svetlana, this is why it is vitally important that we understand why our electoral system needs urgent reform. Because what the PPP is doing, and this, I've said this 5 years now, is that they're deliberately engineering the population to make Guyanese irrelevant. They're making it so that they don't need Guyanese votes. So they can go in there, they do whatever they want, and then elections happen. And because they have engineered the system, because, you know, there is capture of GCOM, they can do what they like. So I hope that our message is being heard loud and clear. That unless Guyanese from all walks of life, from whatever political persuasion, stand up and demand that the system changes, you are complicit in negating your own vote if you allow the PPP to continue. Jagdeo and Ali and all of them to continue on this road, Nandlal and all of them, because one of these days when you will need someone to hear your cry, there'll be no one there because you're not speaking up now because it's not convenient for you.
What are some of you've spoken at length about the need for constitutional reform, some of the major issues that must be addressed. But what are some of the things that you definitely have on your agenda to look out for in Parliament to address to ensure that the resources of the country are spent wisely and prudently? What is your parliamentary agenda looking like?
Well, it's packed. It's packed, I can tell you that. I will tell you, I will not give specifics, but what I will say is that you'll see us making tremendous use of the private members day where the opposition can move legislation, the use of petitions, questions to ministers to really intensify the level of scrutiny. The danger is that we could ask all the questions that we want. The PPP could decide that they're not answering it, as they have done in the 12th Parliament, you know, and so it'll have to be robust. And the idea would be to bring the information to the people of Guyana, to ensure that the attitudes of the government towards answering questions, that their attitude is exposed for the dismissive one that it is. Using parliamentary addresses to really help Guyanese to understand what the real issues are. And one thing that Forward Guyana will promise is that we're not going to be opposing just because we sit in the opposition benches. If the government brings an initiative that we see value in and merit in, we will happily support it. If we see an initiative that could be tweaked to deliver greater benefits to the people of Guyana, we will propose those tweaks. And if we see interventions that are downright harmful, we will vigorously oppose those in the National Assembly and invite Guyanese to use the lawful means available to them to oppose those harmful interventions.
Now, 5 years from now, what would be 3 indicators that you would use as proof that Forward Guyana movement has delivered?
That's a very interesting question. For us, it will be the growth of our membership, because as you grow in your mandate to represent people, people should naturally want to come and be a part of what you're doing. It will be, I think, the number of pieces of legislation that we would have proposed, and the number of, for example, motions that we would have brought on various issues. I think as well for us in terms of the capacity of the membership, that you'll see thousands of Guyanese who are empowered now and willing to be a part of a movement that is here not to do politics as usual, but to disrupt the status quo. And if we could just impact the political conversation in a manner that Guyanese begin to question, why is this done? I was reminded of a tale, and I'll wrap up by sharing this. This man and this woman were married. He was a wealthy man, so she had need of nothing. But he observed that when she cooked ham, she would always cut the other end off. And he couldn't figure out why. And so one day he asked her, why do you do that? Well, this is how I saw my mom doing it. So one day the mom came to visit, and it perplexed him so that he asked her, Mom, why do you? She said, well, we were poor. This is the largest size of pan that we had to bake it in. So I obviously had to cut it so that they will fit. What's the moral of that story? We have to learn to question long-held beliefs, question long-held practices, because we may very well find that we are simply doing things because this is how it always has been done. That is not a sufficient answer for Forward Guyana movement. And so if we could awaken that sense of inquisitiveness in Guyanese, awaken that sense of this is my country and I must control the destiny of my country, then I would count us as being very, very successful. People believe that the goal is the presidency, and that might not necessarily be the measure of success that we hold ourselves to, but positively impacting the system, because sometimes a wedge is the most important thing. Sometimes something that stops decline is most important. So we're excited about the journey ahead, and we're looking forward to growing, we're looking forward to building. We have some enthusiastic members, and it's going to be an interesting ride. It won't be smooth sailing, and we're prepared for that, and as leaders you have to be prepared for that. But we are deeply, deeply encouraged, Svetlana, and this is just the beginning. This is a few months in, and we're causing this much waves. Can you imagine? Another 5 years? Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining me on Sources, and I wish you all the best. Congratulations again on securing a seat in the National Assembly.
Thank you so much.
And to our viewers, thanks for tuning in. With that, we've come to the end of this edition of Sources. I've been your host, Svetlana Marshall.